I think it helps actually to have very little ego wrapped up into this, so that, the ownership of whose idea it was and how it got started. If they have been successful, you can always bring it back to the leadership that's been in place.
Welcome to the Science of Leadership, the podcast dedicated to helping you become a better leader. Here, you'll gain valuable knowledge, hear inspiring stories, and learn the scientific principles that promote exceptional leadership. I'm Tom Collins, your host, and I'm thrilled to have you join us on this journey to becoming a better leader. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Dr. Phil Oldham, President of Tennessee Tech University, to discuss how to create a vision and get buy-in. A distinguished leader in academia, Dr. Oldham holds a PhD in analytical chemistry from Texas A&M and has held key leadership roles, including chair of the chemistry department and dean at Mississippi State and provost at UT Chattanooga. Since becoming Tennessee Tech's president in 2012, he has led remarkable academic and campus growth. He also serves on the NCAA Presidential Forum and the Tennessee Valley Corridor Board. Dr. Oldham, thank you for joining me today on the Science of Leadership, and thank you for all you've done and are doing to help Tennessee Tech in becoming the top-rated public university in Tennessee, and also wings up.
Thanks, Tom. It's good to be with you.
All right, let's talk about the importance for leaders to be able to create a vision and perhaps, as importantly, get people to buy into the vision. First, I always like to define our terms here on the Science of Leadership. So let me ask you, what do you think of when you think of creating a vision?
Well, it's a really good question, and leadership, as you know, has so many different layers. I think you framed it right, though. Vision is a huge part of that, maybe the most important part of good leadership. I may turn this on its head just a little bit for you, however. I'm not sure, at least in my experience, you really create a vision as much as you help define it. I guess I'm blessed or cursed, one or the other, with having a lot of ideas, either original to me or stolen from somebody else, and sorting through those and trying to figure out which ones have opportunity is probably the key for me. Maybe that's creating a vision. I don't know. I think it's more looking at where the opportunities are and seeing what is the right time, and if you have the right ingredients to put something together to make it meaningful. Otherwise, it's just a figment of your imagination. So that's the way I look at it, at least. I don't know that I create a vision, but I sure grab hold of one if it's the right time.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea, and I think you hit on something that's really important, that a vision doesn't have to be created solely by ourselves. It can be something that we borrow, so to speak, from someone else, or that we co-create with others that we're leading and with whom we're working and so forth. So I think that's a really important part. I was struck as you were talking, that vision without action is a dream, is a pipe dream, I should say. So it is that there is this something actionable that you could actually achieve it. Otherwise, it's just lunacy.
Yeah, I think the follow up on that old saying is action without vision is a nightmare.
Right. So, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so creating vision is really important, but unless we can also get buy-in, then that is sort of the pipe dream. But from your perspective, what does it look like to get buy-in for your vision?
It's working when it comes back to you without attribution. When people in your organization or other people start using the same language or similar thoughts, and in some cases don't even realize you may have originated it or started it, I think it helps actually to have very little ego wrapped up into this, so that the ownership of whose idea it was and how it got started, I think probably is more of a deterrent than than a help in most cases. So I think one, you got to give it time, and timing is really important for anything to work. Sometimes you can have the best idea in the world, but it's just not the right time for it, and your folks aren't ready for it, or you don't have the rest of the pieces in place yet for it. It doesn't mean it's a bad idea. It just means it wasn't the right time. I think you're right about there is some science to leadership, but there's a little bit of art to it as well. I think having a touch of art to say, okay, that's a great idea, but maybe we need to wait a little while for that one to come together. And because if you try to push it when it's not time yet, you can end up doing more damage than good. And so just sort of understanding that dynamic, I think, is really important.
You were saying there, this idea when it comes back to you without attribution, that reminds me of Lausa from the Tao Te Ching, sorry. When the leader's work is done, the people say, we did it ourselves.
Yeah.
It's the sort of acme of great leadership. So I think that's perfect. And then this idea of timing, the importance of timing, and that you can have a great idea, but if the time is not right, then you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
In a real sense, not be able to achieve it. So, and I have something I'll share a little bit later that I think highlights that to some degree. But in thinking about all the things that you've done at Tech, I mean, I graduated quite a while back from Tech, but it has changed so tremendously under your guidance, and so I've just been wondering how did you go about creating that vision that you have, and then how did you actually go about getting buy-in from all the parties? Because there are a lot of stakeholders, obviously.
Sure. Well, the hardest thing to implement on a campus or any complex organization is culture, and culture takes time to change. It doesn't happen overnight. I think we go through developmental phases, sort of like people do. And so, a teenager acts differently than a young adult, and a adolescent acts differently than a teenager, and you expect that, you understand that. And as we all grow, we go through those phases, and we mature into something that we're basically the same people, but we act and relate differently. So I think institutions kind of go through that same thing. And it's interesting, it doesn't really have to do with chronological age. So Tennessee Tech is over 100 years old, but in a lot of ways, developmentally, we're still sort of in our late teens, early 20s. And so I think if you understand some of that as you're implementing change on a campus, you sort of measure your expectations a little bit, and work to the strengths of the institution. And so I think as we learn and grow, then you're ready for a next challenge. You're ready for the next opportunity. And campuses are that way as well. So, to your question about how this all kind of got started, I mean, you work with what you have, and you don't try to make it something that it's not immediately. You just say, okay, here's what's here, here's what's available, here are the current opportunities and strengths, and you try to move the needle as gently and quickly as you can to something better. And once that is sort of fully incorporated and integrated into the campus, then the campus is ready for the next challenge. It's sort of a iterative progression of steps. We've been able to achieve what's called R2 status. We're Research 2 University now. We're doing about 4 to 5 times as much research in terms of sponsored research as we were doing a decade ago. We couldn't have done that overnight.
Sure.
That was a step forward here, a step forward there, sometimes a step
Mm-hmm.
backward as you go. So it's not a
Mm-hmm.
linear progression at all. The thing about buy-in is that as you see some success happen, as everybody sees a little bit of success, that provides some energy and some fuel to proceed on to the next stage. I like to say that I think one of the best things that's happened here is there's a fundamental change in our belief in ourselves
Yeah.
that is taking place, and there's a belief in the university, in ourselves, that we can compete at the highest levels in whatever we're doing, that was a little lacking a decade or so ago. And once you sort of reach that tipping point, then
Mm-hmm.
a lot of amazing things start happening, and it really outgrows your vision if it's working the way it should, because any individual's vision by itself is it's just self-limiting.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can let it go and let it grow on its own, then it comes back to you, many times greater than you could have ever imagined, and that's really kind of what's happening here now.
Yeah. Wow. There was so much great stuff you just shared right there. The first thing that was the more recent thing that you were just saying is this idea of collective vision. And if, as leaders, I think what I'm hearing from you is, if we're going to be really successful, that vision has to be a collective. Like, people have to assume it. They have to.
Mm-hmm.
It has to become their vision, and then everybody starts working to a point where, just as you said, it becomes bigger than the person who originally initiated the vision could have imagined, and it's so much greater and broader. So I think that's a tremendous insight on this. And then this idea of, it goes back to what you said earlier, timing. You were talking about being sort of adolescent, early adulthood ish in the life cycle of tech, and it's that same sort of thing in a sense. An entity, a group, a culture, whatever, has to be ready for that vision. Otherwise, as mentioned earlier, it can be lunacy. And so being at the right time frame and aligning with that and recognizing it in the people that we're trying to lead, I think is vitally important as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that a lot of times in our society, especially, it seems like they don't recognize the state of the culture or the society, and they're trying to push something that may be an absolutely wonderful vision,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not ready.
Right.
And then it falls flat.
Yeah. And unfortunately, in most of those cases, it ultimately delays that progress that needs to happen by trying to force it too soon. There's no formula for that. I mean, there's no equation that you can plug into to say, okay, now I do X or now I do Y or whatever. You just sort of have to have a intuitive feel for that, and a lot of times that comes about by making mistakes along the way. I mean, you just as you indicated, my background's chemistry. I was trained as an experimental scientist. I mean, a failed experiment is not a failure. It's a great learning opportunity that ultimately leads you to some other success.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at it that way, at least. And so I'm a big advocate for, pilot exercises, trying things, testing,
Get the little wins.
Yeah. And so to some extent, this is part of the culture issue too, is to lower the risk level for people to attempt things. If the risk is too high for them, they won't try it. And so you get stuck in a status quo. If you can lower the risk tolerance a little bit, and help people realize, okay, don't be foolish. Don't do something that's going to be very damaging. But we can control some attempts and give it a try, see if it works, see what we learn from it, and maybe gain some confidence to go bigger and better with the next time. So I think that's really important for organizations to be able to do. And unfortunately, in higher education, we tend to be very risk averse. And that's one reason why you see higher education, in many cases, lagging behind society instead of leading society with educational opportunities. We tend to be lagging behind where everybody else has already figured out we need to go.
Yeah. Again, so many great insights there. I was just thinking about my undergraduate degree from Tech is in chemistry also. And so thinking about that and this growth mindset, which is what you were talking about, and didn't necessarily say that, quote, failure is an opportunity to learn and to grow and to do great things down the road. It goes back to Edison's quote, I didn't fail 10,000 times. I just figured out 10,000 things that wouldn't work.
That's
or whatever
right.
it may be.
Exactly
I'm
right.
butchering it, but that's the general idea of it. Well, as I've thought about coming up to our conversation and thinking about what I've done in trying to, in leading and what I do best as a leader, I think that one of the things I actually do best is creating a vision and getting buy-in. And so it seems like I've always really been good at that. Maybe it's because I identify the right people. I think that's a strength. It may be because I have that ability to know when people are in the right place to do it. I got a couple of contrasting experiences I thought might share with our listeners so that that could be instructive, informative to them. So, but I wanted to highlight those with regard to creating a vision and getting buy-in. So when I started my career, I had this idea for a multidisciplinary program to take care of kids with genetic conditions that affect their arteries as well as other parts of their bodies. And I had trained at one of the best programs in the world. And because of my research, I had garnered very early in my career a national reputation for this stuff, which it's still ridiculous that occurred. But anyway, so I was coming from this internationally renowned program to my first position, and it was at a different institution, a good institution, but not one that had the same vision and goals as the one where I trained. And so when I got there, I began sharing my vision about this nationally recognized program for these children with arterial problems. And part of that was meeting with the hospital's marketing director. And so I met with him to talk about a campaign. How do we get this out there? And I still remember sitting down with this guy and explaining to him what I had in mind for building this program that would really attract patients from across the country. After we've talked for a while, he said, "So it sounds like you want to build the referral center in this city." And I was just absolutely flabbergasted. Here I was casting this vision for people coming from across the country, and that was so outside of his frame of reference that he couldn't see it. There were numerous others who couldn't see it either, but I was able to find actually a cadre of folks who could see it. And so we set about bringing it to life and bringing it to pass. And so when I went to my next organization, it was a highly vaunted institution where almost everyone has this big vision mentality. So when I cast my vision for an internationally renowned program for these kids, people saw it. I didn't have to do so much work to get them to understand it. I was able to communicate it clearly, get them to buy into it readily. And those two experiences are really highly valuable leadership lessons for me, that if you are going to be successful in casting a vision and getting people to buy into it, they have to be, just as you said, at a place mentally, certainly, but even in some regards, environmentally, to see it. And so if people find themselves unable to get someone to see the vision and buy into that, that doesn't necessarily mean that their vision is bad or even that they're doing a poor job communicating. It may just be that it isn't the right place or the right time where people can imagine it.
No, that's exactly right. A little more close to home. So my wife actually has went to undergraduate. Her undergraduate major was in interior design. So she has an incredible ability to see colors and textures and what would look good with each other. And I don't possess that skill. And so I can't tell you how many times we've had the conversation about, she would say, okay, can't you see this? We'll paint that wall this color and we'll do that room a different color and we'll use this fabric here. And fortunately we have evolved to a point in our relationship where I just say, it will be great. I can't see it, but I trust you completely because you're never wrong. And so I think to some extent it's sort of like that as well. I think, you build trust within a relationship, within an organization. And so even when they may not be able to fully see the vision you're talking about, they believe in you enough that they buy in because they've seen enough and they've experienced enough to say, okay, let's give it a try. And that's a very important element in this as well. So, leadership, there's a lot of levels to it, and every leader is a little different. I think it's good that they are, because the personality and character play a big role in that, and it does need to be, it can't be contrived. It can't be put on. You can't assume a persona that's not your own and be effective, I don't believe. So it needs to be real. It needs to be genuine, authentic. And so you need to make it your own style, but building that sense of relationship so that people can see, okay, I get it. You haven't steered us wrong. And so being trustworthy is a big part of it as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So on previous episodes, we've hit on this idea of trust a lot on the Science of Leadership and competence also. So I did this study, and our listeners know I've mentioned it several times, but study where I interviewed 51 four-star generals and admirals and got their perspectives on leadership, and then scientifically analyzed that and have written a book, and we're editing the book right now. And so the 4 stars of leadership are character, competence, caring, and communication. And you really have hit on all those. Trust is built on character and caring about people, the relationships there. Competence, you mentioned. Basically, people can see, hey, this person has been able to accomplish other things before. And then obviously communicating and broadcasting that vision, I think, is vital. So you hit on each one of those, and that wasn't even prompted. So that's great. Well, I think about John F. Kennedy a lot, maybe just because he was such this, at least in the history classes and things that I've seen, videos and so on, of him. He was just this charismatic visionary. And so as I was thinking about our discussion, I was reminded of his speech at Rice University in 1962 when he cast this vision for going to the moon. And, why does Rice play Texas? If we took Kennedy in that speech and put him in front of a crowd in 1862, 100 years before, they would have never been able to see it. They would have thought he was absolutely ridiculous and insane. But that crowd in Houston in 1962 was at a place mentally and environmentally where they could imagine it and could buy into it. And because of that, on July 20th, 1969, we landed on the moon. Just that's incredible. But that's the power of having a vision, being able to cast the vision, knowing the right time and the right place to do so. And so Wow, that's
Yeah. So it's,
powerful.
have you ever thought, it would be, unfortunately, we can't ask him because he didn't live long enough, but it would be interesting to know if he really believed that we could do that in the decade, or if, because I mean, this happens as well.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you may cast a vision that you're not even convinced is doable, but you know that uh, the the journey to attempt that will ultimately be far better than if you didn't try.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's an important thing as well. Sometimes the ultimate goal may not be the the thing that you set out to do initially. Sometimes it's limited. I mean, what would it have been like if he said, "Hey, we're going to go to Mars uh, by
Yeah.
in the next 20 years"? I mean, we may be at Mars now.
Yeah.
I don't know.
True.
It's But the fact that he was willing to throw out a really big, bodacious kind of goal
A moonshot.
that just kind of put everybody back on their heels for a minute and said, "Wow, is that even possible?" And then within almost minutes, people said, "Yeah, let's do it."
Right.
It's like, okay, and of course, you got to understand the history of what was going on at
Mm-hmm.
that time in the world, and sort of the attitudes and culture in America at the time. But he tapped into it in a way
Mm-hmm.
that was incredible. And of course, as you know, the spinoff, discoveries and developments out of the space program far exceeded even landing on the moon. So
Yeah, we're still feeling the repercussions of that.
yes,
The technology that we're using in this moment
that's
to do
right.
this podcast, a result of that. Yeah, just thinking about like when he said that from a science standpoint, from a materials engineering standpoint,
Hmm.
like that was insane. There was no like nobody would have ever been like, yeah, we can do that because we didn't have most of the materials. We didn't have the even the math figured out for how to do it, um, and to do all that in 7 years because he said it in 62 and we landed in 69.
That's right.
Um, just incredible. But that is a great question. Did he actually believe it?
Yeah, I guess
He
part of me,
sold it like he did, I
yeah,
guess.
part of me believes that he did, but it makes me wonder if he had questions, and if he said, well, if it's 1972 instead of 1969, that's still a great success, and it
Yeah.
would have been.
Right. Right. Nobody would have faulted him for
Well, I
missing
mean,
it.
it's been 50 years and nobody's done it since. So, you know,
From your perspective, as we continue to think about vision and how the role it plays in leadership, why is it important for leaders to be able to create that vision for those that we lead?
well, there's a lot of great sayings about all that. Without vision, people are lost. Just by nature, sociologically, we have a tendency to kind of chase our tail a lot without having some good leadership. And
Mm-hmm.
and you can look at almost any organization, any community. If they have been successful, if they've been at the top of their game, so to speak, you can always bring it back to the leadership that's been in place. And where there's a lack of leadership, everything falters.
Mm-hmm.
It's not I wouldn't say it's a silver bullet. It doesn't guarantee success,
Sure.
but without it, it's next to impossible to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
So leadership is really key, and it needs to be pretty consistent and coherent and just sort of balanced. But and it's that's probably a little bit of the struggle we have here in the United States now politically, because we bounce around a lot with different leaders, and it's wonderful that we live in a democratic republic where we can choose our own leaders. That's tremendous. Uh, but we tend to be a little schizophrenic about it right now, and that's not to our long-term advantage.
Sure.
And so,
Sure.
consistency of good leadership is really important.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, since we are the science of leadership here on this podcast, I always like to share some of the actual science where people have explored these things. And so when it comes to the impact of casting a vision, research shows there are some really clear benefits. I'll highlight a few of them here. For those who are listening, you can check out more in our show notes and description. When a leader clearly articulates a vision, it boosts success by 1, improving alignment and cohesion. Number 2, raising performance and productivity. Number 3, enhancing creativity and innovation. And 4, increasing organizational commitment. A lot of our listeners may know Jim Collins' book, Good to Great. In that book, he and his team found that a well-communicated vision aligns teams around shared goals, reducing friction and leading to better decision-making and focus. In a study of entrepreneurs and CEOs, Robert Baum and his colleagues discovered that a clear vision helps guide employees towards specific objectives, increasing performance and productivity. Jeroen de Jong and Deanne Den Hartog found that when leaders communicate a strong vision, it sparks more creativity and innovation in their teams. And lastly, Young and Avolio's research show that a clear vision strengthens organizational commitment. When people believe in the vision, they're more loyal and turnover decreases. Big issue that we're having across the nation in all sorts of domains. So being able to cast vision has real life consequences now in our society. Okay, President Oldham, we've covered what casting a vision and getting buy-in look like. For our listeners, what are the practical points that you have for how to do this well?
I think to start with is to make sure it's a good idea that's fully baked. You don't want to jump the gun, be premature. Basically, do your homework, run all the traps yourself. Make sure that you feel good about the idea. Can you think through all of the issues or concerns that could be raised? Because there will be some. Anytime you've got a vision for something different, something new, it's going to be subject to criticism and question. And so you want to be prepared for all those things, and hopefully have answers to most of them. You won't foresee everything, but try to make sure it's a good idea that's got some real merit, and then give people time to sort of digest it. Something I learned early in my career as a department head. Actually, I was pretty young at the time, and I discovered the hard way that if I brought up a new idea in a faculty meeting in the department, most of the time it would get shot down pretty unceremonially, and it was very disheartening. And so what I sort of learned to do was I would take about an hour of my day most days, and I just walk around the building, stop by a colleague's office, sit down for a few minutes and chat. And I just say, hey, I've got this idea I'm thinking about. What do you think? We'd have some conversation back and forth, and it gave them time to think about it. Let me put it that way. And they would often actually come back and make some suggestions that would make it even a better idea, quite honestly. And so if I did that enough, by the time the issue would come up in a faculty meeting, what was interesting, I found out it wasn't my idea anymore, as we talked about before. It was theirs.
Yeah.
And it was actually better than what I'd originally put forward. And so we would have a very constructive meeting, a very constructive conversation, and a clear path forward of what the department wanted to do. I think that process in general, I mean, it varies a little bit depending on the complexity of the organization. I mean, obviously, if now a university of 1,200 employees, I can't go sit in everybody's office for an hour a day. But I think the principles are still the same. Is you've got to give people time to sort of digest it, flip it around upside down, kind of like looking at a new car. You got to try it out a little bit to see if you like it or not. And so I think giving that some time to sink in helps a lot. And then you can sort of come back and gauge the level of integration or acceptance that you're seeing. And so I think sort of measuring the development of the idea within the organization's psychology is a really important component in making that a reality. And at some point you may say, hey, okay, we're just not ready for that yet. And that actually happens quite a bit. And it's okay. It's absolutely okay. That's not, as we said, that's not a failure. That's just a recognition that, hey, there are other things that are more timely and more important to focus on right now.
Yeah, that's good. You've hit on a number of things as I've thought about this, our conversation coming up, to today. I've been trying to think of a process for folks who are looking to cast a vision and so on. And so I kind of identified an 8-step process, and you hit on a number of them for creating a vision, getting buy-in. And it shares some similarities with John Cotter's change process that a lot of folks are aware of. But the first step in creating a vision is to define what the purpose and values are of the organization, because to be effective, the vision has to really align with those. And then next is involve key stakeholders who can take personal ownership in the vision and its success. And you just hit on that. Absolutely. You circulated the idea to other people so that they could get it in their mind, it could germinate, and they started taking some ownership in that. Write the vision into a clear, concise, and inspiring statement that is aspirational yet attainable. We kind of hit on that earlier with whether or not the moonshot was attainable at the time that it was spoken.
Right.
Still, I guess, in debate. Once you've done that, communicate it to the target audience, and then, follow that by clearly showing how the vision aligns with the existing goals of the organization, so that you're not totally taking a different trajectory and the aspirations of everybody on the team. And then empower and engage people to take ownership of the key parts of the vision. And then as the leader, sustain the vision by modeling behaviors that align with it and demonstrate your commitment. And the last step that I saw was, as the environment changes, and you hit on this perfectly, adapt and refine the vision to keep it relevant. Yeah. You may find a bunch of improvements or changes or things that take your vision maybe in an upward trajectory that you never even imagined. So,
yeah, it can actually go. You can go both ways. The idea can get watered down at times, or sort of twisted in a direction that's not as productive if you're not careful, for the wrong reason sometimes, or it can take on an opportunity that emerges that you didn't foresee, and go and exceed your expectations. So, I mean, all that's possible. And I think that's what makes it really a lot of fun and exciting, because when it's sort of like bringing that newborn child home for the first time, and you sort of have in your mind what that's going to be like, but you really don't. You have no idea what that's going to be and what that child's going to grow up to do, but that's what makes it a lot of fun and exciting.
Well, I'll tell you, having visited Tech multiple times now that my daughter she's a junior there and is just blossoming and doing so well, and seeing the campus and seeing the student body and all the things that are going on there, I am just, I'm proud to be a Golden Eagle. Yeah. B, I'm excited for what's going on at Tennessee Tech and how things are growing and improving in tremendous ways. And I'm delighted that you've brought a vision to Tech that really has I think, renovated things for Tech, and we're moving in a great trajectory. So It has been an absolute pleasure to get to speak with you today, Dr. Oldham. Thank you for being on The Science of Leadership. And again, wings up.
Thanks, Tom. Wings up.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of The Science of Leadership. We hope today's discussion has inspired you and given you valuable insights to help you become a better leader. Remember, leadership is about helping those we lead do great things. It's a journey of continual growth and learning. When we embrace that journey with curiosity, courage, and humility, we can confront challenges, overcome barriers, and foster environments where everyone can succeed. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow or subscribe, leave a comment, and share it with others who are passionate about leadership. Until next week, keep leading with character, competence, caring, and communication. This is Tom Collins. Let's keep growing.